Hey there, I'm Sarah Hodges, and this is Executives Uncut, the podcast where we provide solutions for the corporate cycle of hell. Today, we are talking all about uncertainty, which is very timely, let's face it. I'm here again with Fergus Connolly, performance coach, author, and TED Talk speaker, as our very last episode in our Concept of Chaos series. Fergus, it's been quite a ride. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me. So what are we talking what are we talking about today?
We're talking about uncertainty. Did you not know? Were you uncertain about our
Oh, I
topic
thought I
today?
thought I thought you were going to keep going with your dating tips for Justin, so I was
I
just
was.
getting
I was giving
confused.
Justin dating tips right before we started talking. I always like I give him unsolicited dating tips all the time.
And the
Like,
theme
yeah.
was communication.
Which is also very helpful in times of uncertainty.
Paramount.
Right. So why is uncertainty such a struggle for organizations? Like, why did we choose this as our very last concept of chaos?
Well, for me, actually, I think it's one of the most fundamental, like, and not even just in a professional setting, but in a personal sense. We fundamentally have a desire for security and for certainty and prediction. And the name's escaping at me at the minute, but there's a Stanford researcher who has done a lot of work. Like, I mean, we really desire the emotion. We expect a particular emotion, and that's why we thrive on this idea of certainty, predictability. So we make decisions based on the expectation of an emotion we're going to feel, and it is a fundamental desire. But the reality is, of course, the world is not predictable. It's not certain. There's
Yeah.
always random events that happen. So it's something we forget or we become a little bit comfortable with. So
Mhm.
uncertainty is something we're always going to face, and preparing for it, of course, is critical, both professionally and personally.
Yeah. Uncertainty is just it triggers a stress response, right? It puts us in lizard brain, and we want to try to control that situation to keep us safe. It's just a natural, innate human response. We want to avoid uncertainty because if we have an uncertain world, it's like back to hunter and gatherer time. Where's our next meal coming from, right? So uncertainty naturally triggers our stress response. But now in the 21st century, we respond to it a little bit differently. We go through what ifs. We go down the rabbit hole of what ifs, and we think that that's going to help us like navigate through the uncertainty. Like, let's look at it from every single perspective. But especially when it's done in that stress, right? In that feeling of chaos and that feeling of uncertainty, it can easily become a rabbit hole. Have you noticed that?
Oh yeah, and you end up going into the spiral of considering all of these different possibilities, and invariably, we start considering the worst case scenarios,
Hmm.
and it just becomes something that feeds us. We become more nervous, and then we start to worry about so many different things, and like I said, it's something that you cannot avoid, and those who manage it best are those who eventually embrace it and thrive in it. And that is, something that great leaders, in my experience, actually get excited about. And sometimes it's really, really impressive. Well, it is. It's really impressive to watch those people who step forward in those times of uncertainty.
Yeah, because there's a lot of opportunity and uncertainty. It kind of shakes up the status quo and gives you an opportunity to be innovative and change in a positive way to help ultimately in the long run create more security or to do something just quite frankly really cool with your company. Maybe pivot or change a focus that helps you be more agile. But don't you think there's a lot of opportunity in uncertainty if we can find it and focus on it and stay calm enough to see it?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I mean, that's always the way that I frame it. Like, I mean, if something happens that you wasn't expected, that the first goal or resort is to see where the opportunity is, see where it can be exploited to capitalize on it and to move. Because particularly in a competitive sense, with different industries, that's where you make the fastest progress. But you'll only make that progress if you have the mindset for it, and you're prepared to do that. You have prepared to exploit those opportunities, because If you can adapt faster than your competition to the chaos, then you're going to progress.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that sometimes leaders, really anybody, when they see uncertainty, they become a little blinded. They go into that fight or flight and they make short-term solutions. Like, what can make this uncertainty go away? And that limits their ability to become adaptive and look at long-term solutions and pivot, like what you're talking about, for the overall growth of the organization.
Yeah, they become myopic, they become short-sighted,
Yep.
vision narrows, they focus on certain things rather than seeing, the chaos for what it is, which is an opportunity. And in many cases, actually, with, whether it's either with a profession or a group, what you'll actually find is that sometimes it actually saves groups. It gives them an opportunity to pivot, transition into something different, and make great progress. But again, that, you're not going to do that if you have a very static, or insecure, fearful mindset or frame of mind.
Yeah. So what's worked for you and your clients? Like, what helps people prepare for uncertainty or respond to uncertainty in a healthy way that drives, adaptation and performance?
This is going to sound funny, but actually getting really excited about it. And that doesn't mean being Pollyanna about it, but getting excited, using that nervous energy to go, okay, this is good. Like, where can we find an opportunity? How can we use it? How can we adapt faster?
Yeah.
That's really the frame of mind. And it's really interesting with different groups when something like that happens, staying calm and then seeing it as an opportunity where you can actually transition into something. And the end result of that is then that the team gain great confidence, so that the next time something happens, they don't see it again as a fearful, reactionary, hide scenario. They see it as, okay, let's move fast, let's adapt quickly to this, and get
Yeah.
excited about exploiting the opportunity, because things are uncertain. We don't know what we're doing very early on, but that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. And I think, not to be critical of the education system, but when we go through this fixed syllabus or rote learning, and we know what we're doing, and this is what's coming afterwards, it takes away that excitement, that ability to adapt, that ability to develop, and that's where learning happens.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that, you know, as you were saying, it's about putting or putting ourselves in uncomfortable situations or uncertain situations, and then learning from those situations of like, okay, here's how it's an opportunity, a breeding ground for creativity. And when you respond that way on an organizational level, you start to create almost a positive relationship with uncertainty, which is really paradoxical, but very powerful.
Yeah, like, two phrases always come to mind are, be comfortable being uncomfortable. And the other one is that, necessity is the mother of all invention. When you are under pressure, when something does change, that's when, the most invention, creativity, applied and practical invention actually happens, because now you have a challenge that's come out of nowhere. You have to apply resources, you have to sequence events, you have to organize, and you have to overcome this challenge or this uncertain time. Now, that doesn't always mean that the outcomes are going to be, a wonderful outcome. Sometimes you
Sure.
have to make tough decisions, but the faster that you can come to those conclusions, the better. And then you can respond and grow from it and adapt in a positive way overall, certainly in the longer term.
Yeah, there's something that I did in my single years when I was living in New York City, and I had this mission that I nicknamed Ticket for One. And I grew up in a very large family in a very large community. And, New York could be very isolating. And it was often difficult to coordinate with friends to do fun stuff. And I felt like I was just missing out on learning and trying new fun things. So I started just buying a ticket for one to do all sorts of crazy stuff. I went to a Barbara Streisand concert and showed up myself and started belting tunes along with her. But I also did activities that were very uncomfortable, that put me in situations where I was totally out of my element. Besides going skydiving, I went trapezing. I did indoor surfing, ballroom dancing, aerial yoga, all sorts of crazy stuff that took me out of my element so I could intentionally create a positive relationship with uncertainty. So I could feel comfortable being a beginner, walking in a room with no friends, totally out of my element and just being like, all right, let's give this a shot and just see what happens. And so I think, that's almost an extreme way to be intentional about developing a positive relationship with uncertainty. But as adults, we often don't like to be beginners at things. And I think it's really important for leaders to create safe space in their lives where they can be a beginner and can be uncertain and feel that discomfort, because that can build that healthy relationship you're talking about and lend itself to making better decisions and having a positive relationship with uncertainty in the workplace. And you can do that even on a grander level, right? To have weird fun activities in the office once in a while so that everyone can feel comfortable being uncertain and uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to say something that is probably going to, scare a lot of people, but there is incredible benefit in embracing failure. And so when
Oh,
when you're talking
totally.
about uncertainty and understanding that, really what you're talking about in terms of uncertainty is that there is no guarantee of success.
Yeah.
And one of the key ways to embrace that and become comfortable is being comfortable failing. Now, if you can do that on small tasks that are insignificant, you remove the edge that is associated with uncertainty, because failure and overcoming failure in particular, like learning from it, developing from it, it doesn't become such a big threat anymore, and that removes that sense of fear, and that's particularly important. And then getting used to failing in small scale, but learning from it and moving on and propelling and seeing the benefit of it, seeing the learning outcomes. That's
Yeah.
when it becomes exciting. So the next time something happens, it's okay. We the overall outcome here is we're going to become better. We're going to learn something new. We're going to learn a new way to do it. Or particularly in a team environment, I'm going to learn something about a teammate. I learn about a skill that they have that can help us as
Yeah.
overall improve. That's where it really gets exciting. That's what excites me about uncertainty or unforeseen things.
Yeah, let's talk about that more, because you talked about how the individual or the leader, the executive can help, develop a better relationship with uncertainty, inevitable uncertainty themselves. But how do you think, besides, everybody doing aerial yoga together, how can a leader help facilitate or help influence a team member or a staff member to be more comfortable with uncertainty?
Well, you can do either um, critical tasks or tasks that are important, but with a long window, and so you shorten the deadline internally, knowing that in some cases the solution's not going to be perfect,
Mhm.
or it's actually designed to fail. So in the sense that it's a task that they're not going to get completed in time, or it's impossible to complete. But we engage in it knowing that, and then you share. Okay, brilliant. We didn't. How can we do that better? So sometimes giving tasks to people, asking them to present, or giving tasks on a shorter window to someone in a space that's not their area of expertise, bringing them back, but seeing what new things they bring, that can be really really beneficial. Like, you mean, so
Mm.
moving tasks from somebody who's an expert in it to someone else to see what they can come back with, see what other new perspectives they can have. That can
Yeah.
be really beneficial overall, because you're encouraging collaboration. The other thing that is really helpful about that is that people don't end up with their own sacred cows, so to speak. It's not that, well, Jenny always does this. Well, okay, well, um, let's give it to Julia, for example. Let's see how she can, let's see what she does with it, because she might have some interesting ideas. And then it becomes a case of, this is our shared project together. It's not, just something that one person always does.
Yeah, I really like that. I've asked our interns before to switch tasks for a week, and like look at each other's workflows and test them. And I don't think that they like it so much because it's so uncertain, right? They're really out of their element for that week. And, the projects may not be done, quite as well as they would have been done by somebody who was used to doing it week after week. But what's cool is that they have built on each other's skills. So, Justin might come up with a really cool, meme or whatever for social media that Emily didn't think of, and then that helps her elevate and level up what she's doing. So you're totally right. I love that. Creating an opportunity for uncertainty can also create opportunities for collaboration and learning from each other. And I think that, so that's kind of like the intentional way to create uncertainty to develop that relationship. But, I think there's something to be said about just also modeling a positive response to failure. Knowing that uncertainty
Oh,
is going to
yes.
happen and failure is going to happen, and how we handle our employees when they fail, how we handle ourselves when an organization-wide project fails, which happens, how we handle ourselves when we fail is a great, can really set the stage for everyone feeling safe in times of uncertainty.
Yeah, and there's two ways to look at it. One is you either win or you learn. You don't win or lose, you win or learn. But more importantly, just because you so-called win or you achieve an outcome, you may have achieved it, but not to a very high standard. So the perception is, in other words, that just because you get a contract or you achieve something, that it was perfect. And so recognizing that we need to address wins and losses, so to speak, with the same critical eye. So nothing's ever, truly perfect just because you so-called succeeded. It could have been a terrible performance. And so recognizing that there's always a learning outcome. And that's really, really important. And so understanding that, there are going to be lots of these micro failures, and that's what builds ultimately resilience. And so recognizing that, there's going to be uncertainty, we're going to win, we might, if we don't, we're going to learn from it and we're going to improve. The only mistake, true mistake, I believe, is when you make a mistake twice, then that's when it's really a problem.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And something that you mentioned made me think, okay, so we've talked about how to set up our company to have a good relationship with uncertainty and how to respond to it. What do you think leaders can do in the midst of uncertainty to help their employees and support them and themselves?
The most important thing is to lead by example. So it's, remaining calm, and this sounds paradoxical, but remaining calm yet being excited about this challenge. So, because instinctively the first thing that's going to happen is everybody looks to you. So even just in terms of body language and demeanor, that sets the tone. If you're excited about this, but you're not fearful, that's going to filter through to everybody else. Okay, because the worst thing that you can do is look scared, worried, and not sure of what's going to happen. So you have to keep moving forward, being excited about it, even if, and truly, you're not sure what the solution is going to look like. That's okay. We're going to figure it out. And I use the we because we as a team. It's not that you're going to figure it out. Like we spoke about micromanaging, but equally, not delegating or taking tasks away from someone. So we as a group, we're going to figure this out. Don't know what it's going to look like, but I have confidence that, we have the skill sets, the experience, and the people here to figure this out together.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And, something I may add is ask questions, like ask open-ended questions to your team. I always encourage leaders to do more of that. They often say, like, here's what we need to do. Ask your team, what do you think that we need to do? What will help you as we navigate through this? How do I need to show up differently to support you? How do you think you need to show up differently in this time of uncertainty? Just things like that that can help everyone, mine their own relationship with the uncertainty at that moment and bring that forward so everyone's needs are met. That can help a lot.
Yeah, and the other thing that, so when you're faced with this moment of uncertainty, generally it's deemed a negative or seen as in a negative sense. So
Yeah.
it can very, very quickly in a team scenario develop into this, spiral of, running down through a negative. And you have to be careful that you manage that so that you move very quickly from problem finding to problem solving. And
Yeah.
that's where, as a leader, facilitating, ensuring that The questions that are being asked are more focused on finding solutions rather
Yes.
than just people bringing all of these problems. Okay, so how are we going to address this? How are we going to fix it? What are we going to do?
Yeah.
And
And I think it's
ensure,
okay though, sorry to interrupt, but I think it's okay to recognize the weight of the problem. When it's something like COVID, I feel like you're like, oh, this is going to be a great opportunity. It's inauthentic. Like it's okay to take time and take space to say, this sucks. And let's
yeah,
all acknowledge that this sucks and what do you need during this time that sucks? And then once you've processed that, then say, okay, now that we know where we are, what's the opportunity we may be missing? Like
yeah, yeah.
you
You
don't skip
can't.
that part.
No, you can't. Like you can't ignore the reality of of the situation. Yet at the same time, you can't spiral out of control into
Yes,
despair and lose it. Like I mean, you
exactly.
know, otherwise everybody's going to be either crying into their handkerchiefs. But you have to recognize because again, it's not Pollyanna. You can't ignore the reality and and in many cases the threat. But let's get excited. Let's solve this because that's what's going to lead to a more resilient team, a team who now get excited about solving these things and seeing what the future can be.
Awesome. That's so great. So should we get into some tips?
Let's do it.
All right, this is the perfect segue actually, because tip number one is ask your team what they need. Ask them open ended questions and figure out what they really need from you. If there are changes, communicate them early and often and be very transparent with them. That will help them adjust to the uncertainty faster. And learn to sit in uncertainty. Learn to accept it for what it is and see the opportunity that it could bring. Anything you want to add that I missed?
No, no, that's excellent.
All right. So for the coaching challenge this week, put yourself in one situation where you're uncertain of what to expect and how you'll perform. It could be like what I did in New York City, take a dance class, or it could even be like playing a video game with your kids that they are way better at than you, right? You will feel very uncertain very quickly. Whatever it may be that feels right to you, but just make sure that you're, putting yourself in those situations where you are a beginner and uncertain so you can start to develop a positive relationship with that. Fergus, our last episode, how does it feel? I think we did 12
Um,
total.
yeah, yeah,
Dang.
yeah. No, it's been fun.
Well, it is a pleasure. Where can everybody find you? Because I'm sure they're going to want to see more content. I know you put content through other channels. Where can they find
Uh,
you?
Easiest is fergusconnolly.com.
Awesome. So visit fergusconnolly.com for more. I'm sure he'll be back as a guest, at some point. I know that we're going to be talking much more. And everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Executives Uncut. And if you enjoyed our content and you want to see some other guests and interesting ideas that other executives bring to the table, subscribe or share with someone, else who may benefit from it. Thanks again. Visit Hodges Coaching for new episodes. Follow us at Hodges Coaching on social media. I'm Sarah Hodges, and I'll see you next week.